What is happening, and friend? Welcome to another four-wheel drive talk episode. Now, technically, you're seeing Alex from the future because you'll see what I'm talking about here in a moment. You're going to be watching a video here that I actually shot last month, or actually might have been a month and a half ago. But I'm jumping in here because this whole idea of this video that you're going to watch here has certainly evolved from the initial thought. And actually, this was impromptu to begin with. You may recall about 2 months ago, I was up at Aiden James Customs up in Santa Ana, or I released a video where we did a Ask a Professional, where Scott Fisher rather, one of the founders of Aiden James Customs, brought us through a suspension on I think it was a 2014 Toyota 4runner. And along the way, we asked questions as far as relating to suspension, and he was giving us all sorts of tips as he was doing an inspection of a suspension. When that vehicle went down, it was brought to my attention that, hey, the same vehicle was getting one of these guys make these badass gear plates up there. The same vehicle was getting one of these gear plates. So the owner had one of the sliding decks in the back of the Toyota as it is, but those are very limited and there's not a lot of anchor points to secure things on there. And the owner of this vehicle had the fridge back there that was rubbing up against the back door because it wasn't properly, you can't secure it as well as you can with a gear plate. And so they started doing a gear plate installation, and I got to turn the cameras back on. So many of you getting started in overlanding, you're faced with, especially when you're heading out with just a single vehicle, you're faced with the limited amount of storage space. And that's where making the use of every square inch that you got in the back of your vehicle should be top priority. So these gear plates are very popular with overlanders and off-roaders. So I was able to, the cameras were able to turn on to follow that process of installing one of these things. Then when I got back to my studio, I started looking at the footage. I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. And I had some questions with how these things were made. And I got on the phone with Aiden James again. And they shared with me how these things are made. And then one thing led to another. I was offered to go back there and turn my cameras on through the entire process of how these things are made. So that's what I'm getting in front of camera with you right now. So the first part of this video, you're going to watch the installation on this 4runner. Then the video is going to segue, and then you're going to see the process from they have this just high-tech scanner that scans the back. And now this particular case, they were scanning a back of a Subaru, a badass Subaru. You'll see this thing. This thing is a beast. But it was so cool. So they have a sonar that kind of scans out. So therefore they can get a precise measurement of the space. Then they have this big ass fancy machine, that laser cutter that cuts out the actual Baltic birch that they use for these things. And then it goes to, I think they drill the holes out. No, that's right. The machine drills all that out. Then it goes over to Rhino sprayed and all this other stuff. But anyways, I'm going to bring you guys along for the ride. And I think how I'm going to close this video off is the owner sent a message of a brand new, I think it's prototype, but they're going to move with production of a gear plate, a modification to a gear plate that allows for a couple tables. So anyways, I'm going to let you guys get back to the normal broadcast. I don't know whether that makes sense. Anyways, I'll let you get back to the video, but I wanted to let you know that how this video is going to kind of transition from one part to another. So hope you enjoy it. All right, guys, before I go jumping out of here, it turns out the customer for this particular truck right here is having some work done, and talking with Scott, decided to turn the camera back on because this is, I know from a lot of you folks, converting your vehicle, getting it ready for overlanding, obviously, you may have a lot of questions. And making best use of your space, this is why I decided to turn the cameras back on, because these guys, turns out you have a gear plate that is made perfectly for this, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
So you build a house, what do you need? You build an office, what do you need? You need a good, strong foundation. And the same thing applies when you're setting your vehicle up for overlanding or off-road. If you have a good, solid foundation, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, you can build up and do a lot with these.
Correct. That is correct.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, as I understand this, see, I don't have a Toyota, so I'm not really familiar with the slide. So this is a factory slide in this thing, correct?
Correct. Yeah, this is on certain models. You can get this as an option.
Okay. The gear plate that you guys have, well, first off, can you talk to us a little bit about what it is?
Sure. So we have a gear plate made of Baltic birch, and it's Rhino lined. And our gear plates basically will mount to either this sliding cargo tray, or you can do a sliding cargo tray delete, where you pull this out. For example, this customer wants to pull his out and remove his and gain that extra little about 3 inches worth of clearance.
Why would you not want to have this in work? But okay, so they're gaining vertical height or
Correct.
storage space with that.
Correct.
Now you guys make one with a slide too, right?
Correct. We make one that bolts right down to this slide. And we can show you in my vehicle how that works.
Super cool. Let's jump over to there.
Sure.
All right, guys. So to play proper show and tell, we shuffled some vehicles around. Turns out Scott's vehicle is right here, so we moved the customer's car right here so we can kind of go back and forth and where you can see what can be done. And, you know, Scott, speaking of which, talk to us a little bit. I see a big ass slide here. I see a fridge, all sorts of storage. Where do you start with this?
So you start with your foundation, which in my case, I have the sliding cargo tray in my truck. I add our sliding cargo tray gear plate, and there's your foundation. Now you can mount your fridges.
Now, how is this installed on the actual plate here? What do you have to do to get that installed on there?
So our gear plates for these have the holes already countersunk into them. So all you do is you take off a couple panels on the OEM slide. You take out 2 bolts on each side, and you set this gear plate right on top of this sliding cargo tray from Toyota. Put your new bolts down that we provide you, and it bolts right down.
Super cool. Wow. So is there a difference in time from installing it to, like, this one, the slide's coming out? Correct. So from a time standpoint, is there much of a difference from the installation process?
This one will probably take us about 5 minutes to pull everything out, another 2 minutes to put everything back. Wow. As far as the new gear plate. This one, to install this one, I've done this in 30 seconds.
So it just dawned on me, I'm looking at this here, and there's a lot of holes. I'm going to bring this in front of camera so people can see this here. Guys, so I'm grabbing this plate here so you can see. You really can't, I'm showing the underside of this here so you can really appreciate, because on the other side, each of these is a bolt anchor point potential, right?
Correct.
So that's a ton of things that you can do with this, correct?
Yep.
So now this right here, is this just bolted in, or how is that fastened down?
This is bolted right into this gear plate using these mounting holes.
Wow, super cool. So it's made for all sorts of different configurations with different slides?
Correct. Right now we've got support for Dometic fridge slides, Tembo Tusk, Iceco, Pro Eagle jacks, and some of our gear plates now have started coming with U.S. Cargo Control L-track mounts.
Wow. And what vehicles do you make this for?
So right now we have the 4runners, both versions, the sliding cargo tray and the non-sliding cargo tray, which is what we're going to do here. We have the Ford Bronco, the GX 460, the 470, and the FJ Cruiser, as well as the 2nd and 3rd gen Tacoma short beds.
Wow. So I overheard the client talk about in his current setup right here. I was just looking, he was pointing out that the fridge has been moving around because he hasn't had any points to really anchor that down, and there's like rubbing marks up in the door there. So this has got to be a lifesaver for folks where they can finally get things cinched down and really, that's pretty darn cool. Okay, so to get this going right here, what needs to be done though?
First, we need to take out the fridge, and then we'll remove the sliding cargo tray and then the track that the sliding cargo tray is mounted to.
Guys, I'm going to bring you along with this here. So, want to dive into it?
Sure.
All right.
Let's go.
Now, are there any special tools required to get this out?
So, all you'll need is either a flathead screwdriver or a pry tool to pry these up, and I'll show you those as I get it, and then a couple sockets, which I'll walk through as I get there.
Well done.
So first off, to remove this is, I use one of these pry tools, but again, a flathead screwdriver helps as well. And you start at the back because the front has clips that clip underneath.
Got it.
And that's it. There's the clips from the front, and then the pops in the back.
Super cool.
And then what we need is to remove These 4 bolts on each side, these are all 12mm bolts.
Looks like you've done this before.
A couple times. Then this will come right up. And that's the first part. All right, next what we do is remove these 2 tie hooks, which gets this whole front section up. And what you do is take a little flathead screwdriver, pop it underneath the little cap, and you're gonna come back towards you. Then a 10mm socket. That comes right up. You remove those 2, and this all just comes right up. Now what we're going to do is remove this track, which is a 14mm socket. There's 4 bolts, 2 here and 2 up front here.
Wow, that makes it really easy.
Yeah, it comes right out. Next what we'll do is we'll pull this carpet out, pop this up. Save that because you're going to put that back in. Let me do a final screwdriver. Then you'll pull these clips back to unclip the carpet. And the carpet just comes right out.
So Scott, quick question. Now, I've seen these things before, and one of the only complaints that we see with regards to these sort of plates is many of the other companies out there, some of the companies out there, they limit you to what actually works. It's almost proprietary.
Correct.
That you can use. Are there any limitations with your gear plates?
We are trying not to have any limitations. We want to have that universal for all our customers because this gentleman's build is going to be different than my build, as you can see. There's so many different types of builds for these customers that we want to be able to make it so it fits their use.
Now, obviously, this is taking you a little bit longer because you're taking a lot of my questions I'm asking you here, but
Correct.
If you were just able to hammer this out, how long would this take you here?
Probably a total of 10 minutes from removing all this stuff and putting the new gear plate down.
Very cool.
So then we provide 2 new brackets that actually take place of the old brackets that held the rear tie downs. These new brackets are still OEM Toyota brackets, but they are the correct ones for this version of gear plate. And there is arrows on them that show you arrow forward. All right, we are now ready to put this panel back on. And now is to set in the rear gear plate.
What a difference that makes already.
Transforms it, doesn't it?
It does.
What I'm doing is putting in the bolts for the front, so it's all lined up. Okay. Now in the back, we provide you with 2 stick nuts that hold the back section down so it doesn't come up.
Very cool. I'm trying to understand how that, is that a compression fit that's pulling up against the bottom?
That is correct.
Ah, got it. Okay.
Slides in underneath this groove right here, and it holds it.
Ah, super cool.
Yeah. We actually collaborated with JW Off-Road on these, and they're making these for us.
There it is. Now, as you tighten it, does that swing into place? Is that how that works?
No, what I do is I take a pick and I move it.
Ah, got it. Okay.
Okay. There we go.
Wow. That was really straightforward. Now, moving forward, so they can decide the slide. How much weight can this actually hold? In terms of when you're bolting stuff on here, like let's say you have a heavy fridge, so that's hanging out here. Are there any weight restrictions? But then again, that's bolted down on the frame though.
That's bolted right to the body.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've had about 300 pounds worth of stuff in mine, and all of it out.
Wow, that is so super cool.
All right, now what you're looking at here, this is I think it was a 2019 Subaru, and Scott and Joe, Joe's the guy in the red shirt. He's the design engineer, and he's the guy that's going to be scanning this thing in a moment. And Scott and him are kind of strategizing on the different. Basically they're making a brand new gear plate for this Subaru, and they're coming out with all sorts of new gear plates for different vehicles here in the future. But I was able to capture the process with this, and this was eye-opening, because when you look at a gear plate in the finished product and you kind of take for granted and kind of miss all the underlining engineering that goes into designing a simple gear plate. And that's what these guys are doing right now. They're strategizing on the anchor points. And as you're going to see at the end of this video here, this gear plate is very unique. It's badass. You're going to see there's some doors that open up access to that wheel well that you see there. And so they're prepping and kind of strategizing right now on the approach because you can see Joe here in a minute with a scanner. And that's really amazing how they do this. They're going to scan this back end here. Compared to back in the day, what these people had to do in order to come up with a product like this is they had to take measurements, just a bazillion measurements, just to design the gear plate with this. So this takes all the guesswork out of it. This is really fun to see how this all comes together. So take a watch.
So these are reflective targets that the handheld scanner will use to locate as it creates a reference for the 3D model. So it creates a tracking target. So if I were to stop scanning and rescan, it knows exactly where it's at. So
very cool. And how many of these do you need to put in there?
There's a lot of different surfaces and shapes, so it's less critical. The scanner will also use the surfaces and the shapes and the edges and the texture to reference and locate. If this was, say, a surfboard, a perfectly flat surface, you'd want these 4 centimeters apart. But for here, we can go up to like 8, 10, 12 inches. if we have a really reflective surface, like a shiny paint, we have to coat it with this reflection spray. It looks like a light coat of primer paint, but it evaporates, so there's no cleanup. Hopefully we can scan without needing this, as it smells. But you know, when necessary, sometimes you have to add a little bit of the coat. So, in a scan, this is you'll hear people refer to it as a mesh. Now, scan details, we scanned over 400,000 points. We have almost 800,000 triangles in this scan. I could change the resolution down or up to increase or decrease that. I will typically go down to a 1mm resolution. Now that's not accuracy, that's just resolution of the size of the triangles that it's going to compute when we create the final mesh.
Now when you say you're going to go back and post-process, now I see white right here. Is that, do you fill that
I can fill a lot of these little holes, I can fill with the software. I'm going to go back, before I declare this project done, I'm going to go back and make sure we've got details of the holes. For instance, I know I wanted this hole right here in the center of the tire carrier. I need to go back and get a little more detail and make sure I have this nut, or there's a bracket with a bolt right here, so I can get a good center line of that.
I'm just admiring the detail, because right down here you have the that texture. Yeah.
So you can change the way it's viewed. And there you go. Now you can see all the triangles.
Gotcha.
So that's what makes it the mesh. All those little triangles. And some of the post-scan processing is cleaning that up, so it's even easier to use in your CAD package where you're designing the part.
That's cool.
All right, so here's the next thing that just really blew my mind. Now, Aiden James, they invested into this just amazing machine. And this machine, what you're watching here, so this is after the fact. Joe has done all of his secret sauce to the gear plate and all the dimensions, all that other fun stuff. So now this machine is going to laser cut this thing out of this piece of birch wood, and it's also going to punch out or drill all the holes that you see become anchor points in the future. And the reason why I share this part right here is because, again, we're talking about what was done yesterday, figuratively speaking, what these guys are doing right here. This is quite I mean, there's so much precision in what this machine does, what you just saw the scanner does here. So these things, when they're done, compared to what other products are on the marketplace, these things legitimately fit like a glove. So take a watch to this. All right, so now we are at the point where the gear plate is kind of raw wood, and now it's time to get coated with Rhino spray. And this is really fun to watch. A few months ago, I had my truck cap spray. That was actually Linux. They're basically all the same, just different brands. But it's fun to watch how they do this, the technique with this. So you'll see he's up close getting the initial spray on, and then he takes a step back, and you'll see him kind of flicking the spray on there, and that's creating that matte finish that you see at the end. This was a treat to see. Now, the last part of this here, which is where it gets back into that manual process a little bit more, is they're hammering in all of these kind of threaded anchor points into the gear plate. And so, as you can see, there's quite a number of these things. And this is what I think I mentioned earlier, or we were talking with Scott So these things are really configured to be quite universal. So hence the reason you see all these anchor points being in there. So the end user has a lot of options to be able to, different directions that they can go with this. And then of course the finished product, there you go. There it is installed in that Subaru. You can see those kind of two doors there. This thing looks like $1 million. And so again, this was a lot of fun. Aiden, James, I appreciate you guys allowing me to come along for the journey and sharing this with everyone. Amazing job.
All right, friend, there you go. This was a fun video to put together, and I know I say that quite a bit at the end of my clips, but you know what? Did you ever watch How It's Made on Discovery Channel? I don't even know if it's still on, but that used to be one of my favorite shows to watch. They could take something as simple as a metal plate like this, or I'm sure these things have a lot into them, or like a toilet or something. And when you see how these things are constructed, you have a newfound appreciation towards what goes into designing products and so forth that are easy to take for granted. And this gear plate is no exception to that. When you look at this, it's easy to make assumptions of how that is made. But when you look at all the underlining thought and the engineering and all the tech that goes into making something like this, it changes your opinion. There's a lot. It's really fun to watch. So anyways, this was a very interesting, and I hope it was an enlightening video for you here. Now it's that time for, well, I'm going to ask you to do all that YouTube stuff. So if you found some value with this video, do me a favor, crush that like button down below. If you're currently not subscribed to the channel, friend, what are you waiting for? We'd love to have you part of the family. And last but not least, hit that bell so therefore you're notified every single time that I come out with a video like this. Friends, that's all I have here for you today. Oh, I do want to circle around, or actually double down. If you're interested in one of these gear plates, check out the Aiden James website. I'm going to put a link down below. If you don't see a gear plate yet available, get on the phone with these guys. As I understand, these guys are coming out they're adding all sorts of new vehicles all the time. So you might want, if you don't see something on their website listed already, get on the horn with them. Who knows? They may be coming out with it. It might be the next vehicle that they're coming out with. But now, with that said, I'm going to be jumping out of my studio, so you get out there, stay healthy, and find your adventure.